We're going to talk about brush tips and tricks. Alright, we're going to talk about a variety of things. First thing I want you to consider is what brush you're going to select. You need to pick the appropriate size for what you're going to use. We've got big brushes, little brushes. I'm going to be painting on this practice sheet that you're going to be using later on. And if I'm trying to paint this itty bitty little triangle here, I don't want to use this brush because I'm not going to be able to stay in those lines, and that's pretty much what we're trying to practice here. So if you picked maybe a brush this size, I'd be able to get into that little tiny corner much better. Alright, so picking your brush is going to matter. You may want to use a tiny little brush to do your edges, and then maybe use a bigger brush for filling in, or a bigger brush to mix your paint. Okay, so that's step one. Alright, so I'm going to pull in some paint here. So if I pick that little tiny brush to paint a corner, I'm just going to pull some paint up, and this, I should be able to get that little bitty corner pretty well with a small brush. Alright, another issue I want you to consider is how you load a brush. When you're loading a brush, if you pick up this much paint, am I going to be able to get a little tiny corner with that much paint on it? Or is it possibly going to drip? So I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to roll it in the surface. And then I'm going to have a better point on the end of that brush. So load your brush, roll it the edge up. Okay? Alright. We're going to be painting edges first because that's the trickiest part. And what I would suggest you always do is paint the edge first, point the end of the brush to the edge because you can see it better, and then go back and fill in. It's kind of like when you're painting with, when you're drawing with crayons or markers. As a little kid you learn, let me fill in the edges first, and then I can do the middle really quickly. Okay. Point the end of the brush to the edge so you can see where that paintbrush is. I can't always tell where the side back end of my brush is, but if I turn the paper and point the tip to the edge I'm trying to paint, I can see where it is. Can't always tell where the back end of my brush is, and we want so often to slide that brush down that edge, and it doesn't always work. Alright, so you can paint the edges first and then go back in and fill in really quickly, and then you've got a good clean edge. Another suggestion, a lot of times we want to sketch and push back and forth when we paint. My suggestion is going to be to set your brush down and pull it really smooth so you don't get a jagged edge. Okay? If you are painting a long surface, clean my brush. If you're painting a long surface, you may run out of paint. And I suggest that you pull that long edge, but at some point I'm going to start running out of paint here. How do if I reload, what I want you to do is kind of yield, like you're a driver, yielding into merging into traffic. So curve into it and then go up and meet that point and then continue that long stroke. Things we really want to avoid doing, things that we don't want to do, okay, is you don't want to pull, let me find a good edge. You don't want to pull the brush beside it. When you get better, you might be able to do that, but it's really hard to know where the back end of this brush is. So if I'm painting into a corner, I may end up having a problem with that. You want to avoid sketching it because see how hard it is to get a good clean edge? You want to avoid doing that. And then another thing kids want to do is they want to push that paint up to the edge, and that's going to give you really hard to get a clean edge. I would put it in there, point the tip to the edge you're trying to paint, and pull it. Okay? So a couple issues, let's review. 1, select your brush for the job you're doing. A smaller brush to get into little tiny edges is a good idea. 2, load your brush and roll it in the paint so that it's not overly full, it's not going to drip. You can have a good point. 3, point the brush to the edge you're trying to paint. Turn your paper so that you can get to the next edge. Pull it in a nice smooth line so you get a clean edge, and then go back and fill in your piece. Okay? Good luck.